Hi, welcome to Sidewalk Talk. I'm Steve Fortunato. This is a podcast about storytelling, stories of inspiration, information, and education. Today we have a story to share with you. To me, it's an inspiring story. And then for me, it's also entertaining. So we have with us Chris Hedrick from Blue Skies HD Video and Film Production. Chris and I go way back. We worked together in television in the, we would say,
1930s.
the early 90s to the late 90s, somewhere in there, more mid 90s. We did a lot of work together. So, and then we probably lost the connection as you went to Columbus. I left Youngstown, Ohio, ended up back in Buffalo, my hometown, and then through the wonders of the internet and Facebook, we've reconnected. And so for me, it's entertaining because just talking to you brings back a lot of memories. And we'll get to your story, and because you really do have a pretty cool story, how you have pivoted your business in this COVID world. And it's been a help to obviously you and your company, but also to your clients, your customers. So let's get to you and your story. Go back to the 90s. So you were a videographer, a news.
So I started out graduating high school, and I went into the Army as a journalist. The biggest oxymoron there is, military journalist.
Okay.
Right? Got out of the Army and wanted to find a job in radio. I wanted to be a broadcaster.
Yeah.
And I wanted to do sports. I wanted to actually be a play-by-play guy. And just happened to run into somebody who needed help at a local TV studio in Louisville, Ohio.
Louisville? Okay.
Louisville, just outside of Canton.
Okay.
And I go there, and I meet the guy that runs this little TV studio. It's a Christian television studio. And he's like, "Do you ever want to learn how to run camera?" And I was like, I wanted to do anything in broadcasting. So I said, "Yeah, that's fine." He said, this is on a Wednesday. He said, "Well, why don't you come back on Monday and I'll show you how to run studio camera." So I came back on Monday, started to learn how to run studio camera. 4 months after I started, I was doing pretty good. I picked it up pretty quickly. His son was the director, and he was 19 years old. And they had volunteers. The other camera operators and the audio guy was a volunteer. Well, his son got into an argument with the guy who was running audio, and he came down. The guy was like 40 years old, and this 19-year-old kid is yelling at him. And he goes to the boss, Denny Sr., and he says, "I quit." He walks off the job. So Denny came to me and he said, "Chris, you ever thought about running audio?" I said, "Yeah, sure, whatever." He says, "Well, I'll take you to lunch. I'll bring you back. I'll teach you how to run audio." So the next day I was running audio. On the end of the program was a live 2-hour program. It was like a variety show. We had interviews, fundraising, music, things like that. So it was a lot to learn quickly. So I started to run audio. I did that for about another 4 months. And then Denny Jr., who was the director, decided he was going to go back to school. So now they needed a director. And Denny Sr. came to me and he said, "Chris, you ever thought about directing?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure, whatever." I'm just hungry to learn about stuff. So same thing. He took me to lunch, came back in the afternoon, taught me how to direct. Now back then, in this production, it was, if you were directing, you were also the switcher. You did the technical directing. Right. You ran Chiron, which was the graphics.
Yeah.
And you also ran tape.
Okay.
So you're doing like 3 jobs at the same time. So I did that for like another 6 months. And then he introduced me to a guy, Mike Tonjes, with Image Video in Canton.
Yeah.
And
I used to do games, and then, I remember them.
Right. And that's how we actually met. So that Image Video, I started doing freelance work for them. We did a lot of sporting events in Northeast Ohio, and then also in Steubenville. And that's how we met. You were at Steubenville.
Right. I was at Channel 9 in Steubenville Big Red, and high school football. So you did a lot of high school football games.
Did a lot of high school football games.
That was awesome.
Yeah. Oh, it was great. It was
Yeah.
great. Some of the best games I'd ever seen in my life were high school games.
Well, you and I, we were talking before we started recording about a football game we covered, the AFC Championship game. I don't remember what year, but it was the Colts, Jim Harbaugh and the Steelers in Pittsburgh, and the stadium was shaking. But and it was super loud. In fact, I was actually, you were a videographer, and so you're doing your thing before the game. I'm on the field with you, and we could feel Three River Stadium just shaking. And I got caught up in the moment. I mean, I wanted to play the game. It was awesome. I wanted to be Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah.
And in fact, I got in another videographer's way, and he tapped me on because I had no reason to be there. I should have been up in the booth. And he got in my face and yelled at me. But it was the loudest game ever, except the loudest. It was the loudest NFL game I had ever been to, and I'd been to the Browns. Were you with me on the last Browns game against the
Oh yeah,
Bengals?
against the Bengals.
That
Yeah.
was scary. That was actually scary when people were ripping the seats apart. But the loudest game I was ever at was actually a Steubenville Big Red game. Is it called Harding Stadium in Steubenville? It was Steubenville against East Liverpool. I want to say it was a playoff game. You know, it seats like 7,000, maybe 10,000. I don't remember how big, but it's not as many as like Three River Stadium was. It was the loud. I couldn't hear myself talk. It
Yeah.
was so loud. But high school football in Ohio and Northeast Ohio, it was great. So you cut your teeth, and so you always wanted to be you enjoyed the art form of broadcast. That's why you were like, I'll do anything, right? And you started learning everything.
Absolutely. Yeah. When I grew up, my parents were divorced, and the television was kind of like my best friend. And I remember sitting there watching, I mean, in the early 80s football games, and I enjoyed listening to Keith Jackson and
The best.
just Howard Cosell.
Oh yeah.
And I used to watch Monday Night Football. My mom would let me stay up and watch Monday Night Football, and eventually she'd yell at me to go to bed. But I always wanted to be the person that was on air doing games, and never thought I'd be a videographer or doing the video part of things. But it was all the same to me when I was an adult and I was starving a little bit. It didn't really matter what I did.
Right. But you were in the art. You got involved in the art form.
Right.
And okay, so you learned all those things at the high school level. Then when did you start? Did you work at Channel 9 or did you start at 33?
So no, I never worked at Channel 9. I worked at Image Video, and I did a lot of freelance stuff, and that's how I met you. Okay. That's the first time I met you. And what's always funny about when you do, and especially as you get into like regional television, whether it's through an affiliate or you're doing broadcast games, you're always running into people that are the fans really know well.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're rubbing shoulders with them, you know, and it becomes, you become less of a fan, and you realize that people are just people, right?
Right.
And so there tended to always be these big events you were going to. And just, I remember just the silliness of some of the things. And so I eventually ended up working at Channel 33 in Youngstown, and then moving on into TV news. But an example of like a silly thing, like when I first met you, the first night I met you, you were doing a live shot for the news, and I was running camera for the broadcast that night, because we were doing a tape delay of one of the high school games. And it was probably about minus 10 degrees. Yeah. And I was so cold. I mean, I had hand warmers in my gloves and my hands were still cold. And you showed up, and I think I briefly met you, and you had a hat on. You took your hat off. And I said to you, you might want to leave that on. And you're like, I got it. And so you start doing, I mean, what, your news broadcasts were like 5 minutes long?
We did back then. No, we would. So was it 6 o'clock?
Was it pregame? 6 o'clock. No, it was 6 o'clock. It was at the end. It was after
6
weather.
o'clock news, and then you.
Just the newscast.
Yeah. So yeah, we do 5-6 minutes back then.
Yeah, so you got 5 to 6 minutes to get through. That's it.
Yeah.
And about halfway through, your mouth froze because you were so cold, and you got done, and you're like rubbing your mouth because you couldn't even talk. It was so cold. Yeah. And I think I remember saying, should have kept that hat on.
Yeah. I love those days though. And plus we're in our 20s.
So, yeah.
You get whatever. Pain goes away quickly.
You know, that Colts Steelers game.
Yeah.
A memory I have was I remember we didn't really like the Steelers that much because their fans were kind of idiots.
We covered them.
Yeah,
I became, when you cover, I mean, I grew up in Buffalo, so the NFL, I grew up a Bills fan, right? I
yeah.
never I never followed college football until I had to as a job and a career, and I fell in love with Ohio State, and didn't realize how good high school football could be until we were out there. But as we've covered the Browns, Steelers, like Indians and Pirates and all that, I started like I rooted for them. But that game you're talking about, the underdog Colts and Jim Harbaugh, I was all about it.
There must have been a playoff game where they played the Bills and we were covering it, and our jackets from WITV were red, white, and blue. They were
Oh,
blue with a lot of red.
yeah, I remember
And I
those.
remember doing an interview with a fan, and I got the camera on my shoulder, and you're doing the interview, and KDKA, the radio station, or I don't know what it, WDVE or whatever it is
Hmm.
in Pittsburgh,
That's Pittsburgh.
had handed out black and gold bagels,
Hmm.
and they were wrapped in saran wrap.
Oh.
And I'm doing the interview, and I hear this guy yell out, "Enemy news station!" And they start throwing these bagels at us, and they're
Yeah,
hard, and like
yeah,
pelting me in the head.
yeah.
And at that moment, I was like, "Yeah, I don't think I could ever root for the Steelers
Well,
again."
our station, well, so we were in Youngstown. You're especially when I was in
Halfway
Steuben.
between Cleveland
Yeah, so but we were
and
more Browns.
Pittsburgh.
We covered the
Yeah,
Browns more than we did, and but we would go to Steelers games. But when the Browns would play the Steelers, now so our station vehicles were logoed, but we would have Ohio plates. Now we covered the Steelers, so we had news press passes with Steelers. So when we would drive to Pittsburgh with Cleveland plates, I mean, so we'd park the car, we'd come back. That car was, we're lucky we were able to drive it. It was urine all over the car, things that I can't talk about. Well, I could, but I choose not to because I have a business to operate. But
brutal.
yeah, I mean, people, it's football. I mean, in Buffalo now, they're becoming famous for jumping onto tables, right? Well, when we
Yeah,
had fans, the time of this recording, we're entering the second phase of COVID here. So there are no fans going to games. But yeah, were you with me? I remember when we covered the Cavs. What was the name of the Cleveland Cavs arena before Gund Arena? Richfield Coliseum.
right.
So I was on the floor. It was pregame showing. I thought it was you where you would where is the best. I thought, even though it's not my job, where I thought the best place for you to be because you get out earlier during the game. I'd have to be upstairs in the press box. But I remember kind of talking to you, and I was walking, and there was a pregame. They were going to play the Orlando Magic, and I wasn't paying attention, and I thought I bumped into a wall, and I looked up, and it was Shaquille O'Neal. I don't think he felt me. He's 300-pound, 7-foot monster, the biggest human being I had ever seen. I mean, he just kind of like didn't didn't
He
even
thought there
notice I was there. It was
he thought
amazing.
he thought there was a fly on him.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you were with me on that or not, or maybe you were you with me when Scottie Pippen went after me? Were you with me when it was at Richfield and I got lost and somehow I ended up I don't know where I was going because Michael Jordan would do his news conferences. We'd be a group. He would never, not going to do individuals. It was Michael Jordan. He would do
I
it.
wasn't there for that one, and I wasn't there for this one, but I do remember the story because I thought that guy's got a screw loose, and I always thought that. But then you were shooting. It was an Indians, maybe Orioles, and Eddie, and you told the
Oh,
videographer
Eddie
to get a
Murray.
shot of Eddie Murray's
No,
locker or something,
we were in Chicago.
and he went
He
ballistic.
went crazy.
Yeah,
He went crazy. It was Jim Bowser was the photographer
yeah.
because we were on the road. I don't know why we were covering what we were covering, but it was obviously Indians. And I remember being in Chicago and I went to take a look at Comiskey and then I heard the screaming and Jim had been videotaping Eddie Murray's locker, which I don't know. I mean, I think about it now. Yeah, I mean, you might see some personal things they didn't want people to see, but we had gotten permission. You don't just do that. In fact, Mike Hargrove had given us permission, and I looked, and Jim's face was like I thought he was going to pass out. He was so nervous. This guy was in his
Yeah.
face, and when I got in there, Mike Hargrove was breaking it up. He had run out of his manager's office, and he kind of yelled. He's like, "Guys, get in here!" when we came in there, and he pretty much, I said, "What are you doing? You said we could do it." He was like, I know. Just, leave it alone. I got to stand up for my guys. So what do you guys need?" And then we talked it out and
I
moved on.
remember we did a Steelers game, and it must have been right before the playoffs, because the Steelers lost, and Kevin Green, who had this psychotic persona
Yeah.
about him, but I think actually he was a nice guy.
Yeah.
And you came in, and I think everyone had already done the big group interview with him, and you stepped in and said, "Hey, can we ask you one question?" And he just had this like look of rage on his face, and he's like a 250-pound linebacker,
Yeah.
and here's us, and you asked him a question, and he immediately like jumped down your throat and trying to intimidate you,
Yeah.
and you said, "Well, let me just rephrase that question," and you asked it a different way, and then all of a sudden it was weird because he just snapped out of it. He like realized, you know what, I think I was kind of being a jerk there, and
Yeah.
then he answered the question.
I mean, you gotta, I had my ups and downs when it was with professional athletes. I like some of them, I didn't like others, but um, I try to put myself in their shoes, which is, man, they get asked a lot of stupid questions
A
and
lot
the
of dumb
same questions.
questions.
And I also, maybe there's a good question, but you're going to be asked it 4 or 5 times because I may not have been at that particular time. And you know what? That's part of their. Then the other side of me says, well, it's part of your gig. Is you deal with the media, and the media is supposed to be the voice or the ears for the fans so that we can transmit that information and they can understand what's going on. I mean, without the fans, people loving the sport, you don't have much of a sport. So, sometimes I mean, it's just like, don't be just, I'm, you know, and yeah, some of these guys make more in an hour than some of these reporters make in a year. But I
Yeah.
do hear really stupid questions. But when you give it to me, it's just like, come on, I'm just a person, and you're just a person. Let's just have a conversation here, and maybe I can submit something that's gonna help your brand, whatever. So, but yeah,
I don't know if people realize this, but if you look at sports interviews, especially locker room interviews, which they don't really do locker room interviews anymore. It's
yeah,
all
no,
at a podium.
right.
But in the last 15 years, it's gone from questions to the reporter will just throw out a statement,
You're
and
trying to get this clickbait.
yeah, and they just want to have them respond to whatever it's like they're having a conversation when they're not
Yeah,
really having a conversation. You should
yeah.
just be asking a question.
Well, I think that's true. I mean, I could have a whole conversation about where the media has gone, has been really disappointing to me. I mean, I've seen fact checkers. I had talks with people about this before. As fact checkers, I'm like, they're actually putting opinion into fact checking. It just doesn't really make sense. So I'm not. And it's a generalization. I'm not saying all journalists are skewed, but it's. I, more and more, local seems to be the place to go if you want your national news too, because the
Yeah.
national is all skewed. Um, but I remember, back to what you were talking about, when I used to do Youngstown State football games. This is actually after I retired or moved on to a new career after being in television sports. I stayed into it a little bit and did sideline reporting for Youngstown State football, which I loved. I loved doing it. But Jim Tressel was the head coach before he went on to Ohio State. And Jim, if I had a kid, I would want that kid to play for Jim Tressel. If I had a son that was good enough to play football, I'd want him to play there. But his interviews were just, I would interview him at halftime. Like, why are we doing it?
Yeah.
He would say the same thing everywhere. The seniors are great, and this is a really good team that we're playing against, and we just need to regroup, or at the end of the game, whatever it is. It's always, most of the time, that's why I'm like, it's not that hard to. I understand the monotony of getting the same questions over and over, but Tressel had it down. He's a perfect politician. He would speak for a minute and literally really say nothing.
Right.
You know?
I think he did that. And I was in a lot of his interviews, and I just thought that he wanted to control what his own players heard.
Yeah.
And he also wanted to control what the next week's opponents would
Oh
hear.
yeah, there's no doubt. He's so
He
smart.
didn't want any he didn't
So
want any
smart.
pin-up stuff,
Yeah. You would never get anything good
minimal,
out of him. Yeah. And that
minimal.
was his thing. And that's okay. I completely respect. I respect that. But I didn't realize that I mean, you're a professional videographer, photographer. We used to call him photographer, videographer, filmmaker. You're a professional filmmaker. I didn't realize that you always wanted to be in the art form of being behind the mic or on the air. That's why you and I connected so well, because one of our favorites, I didn't know him as a kid, but as a sportscaster, is a guy named Michael Regai.
Bam!
Yeah, bam. Did great. I'm sure he's still doing it. Did play-by-play, would call it. I mean, he had his own unique thing, but his voice was the kind of guy that I grew up like kind of impersonating. Like, I'd have to be a broadcaster to do that. And I always imagine, and he would, it would be Elo inside the Doherty, back out to Price from downtown 3, bam, bam, in the house, in the house. And I always imagine he'd come home and say, kids, how was school today?
Yeah.
But we loved him. We would always look for his highlights coming down, because back then you had the satellite feed and you record. We said, let's listen to Ray Guy, if we couldn't listen to the whole game. And also it reminded me, because it was Ray Guy. He's my favorite punter of all time. Was Ray Guy.
Even though it's spelled completely differently.
Completely different.
Sounds like it. Right.
That's why I don't think I ever called you Chris in my life until the beginning of this episode.
Right.
Your name is Ray Guy.
Ray Guy.
And you call me Ray Guy.
Right.
And it's dedicated to our favorite, which would be Michael Ray Guy. So if he's out there listening and watching, thanks. You inspired us.
I actually met him. We did. Yeah. I did a couple games with him. We would do, when it was back, Fox Sports was used to be called Sports Channel Ohio.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and we would do all the MAC games.
Yeah.
Basketball.
Oh yeah, he's big on MAC. He's the voice of the MAC.
Yeah, we would do. We did basketball and baseball. Some of the coldest baseball games I think I've ever done in my life. Yeah. But he would do those games.
Yeah.
Akron Zips.
Yeah. And then they zip the opponent 5-0, Akron with the win.
You know why they call them the Akron Zips, don't you? Kent State 24, Akron Zip.
In the house, bam. The best. The best.
Oh, classic.
Yeah, great memories. Great memories. And this is what I mean. We were very fortunate. I don't know if people will have those opportunities as much anymore, although there's a lot more opportunity to do things like this. We didn't have this opportunity to create your own podcast back then. So technology advances, but you and I in the early 90s and the mid 90s, there was just more, I feel like there was more opportunity, especially for things that we like to do, which was sports and the art form of sports and using natural sound, videotaping. So let's get into, so you're a news videographer, right? Is that what we call them?
Yep.
Yep.
I ended up going to Rochester. I worked in Rochester for a year.
That's right. Weren't you there when Jim Kelly retired?
Yeah.
Yeah, you have a story about that. I remember. That just hit me. That's an old story. That's right.
You know, when Hall of Famers retire and they're at the podium, they always cry. Right. Because they're leaving behind something that they have done literally for their entire life. And not only did they do it their entire life, but they did it probably better than most.
Right.
And with all of that, that the fans are going to be gone.
Yeah, that's tough.
Right.
That is
they're still going to be there, but you're not going to have that feeling of throwing a touchdown and having, 60,000 people just go crazy.
Right.
And so we drove out to Buffalo for his retirement. It was going to be a big deal. It's going to be on, ESPN was there. Yeah. We covered the announcement live. He's on the air and he is crying like a child, which that's what happens. And hey, you can't hold it against him. Right. So he's on the air crying. Now we're off. 20 minutes of questions. I had to go to the bathroom so bad. And so all I could think of is just, let's get this done because I have to go to the bathroom. I got to get to the urinal as fast as I can. So we get done. I pack up my gear. I run to the bathroom, and we're at the practice facility near what is it called? near Rich Stadium. Is that what
Rich,
it's called?
not anymore.
Not anymore, but
No, yeah, it
that's what
was
it
Rich.
was.
Rich Stadium. Probably was it Rich Stadium in the '90s?
Yeah,
Whatever.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
So they had this big practice facility next to it. So we're
Yep.
inside, and I run to this bathroom, and inside the bathroom, there's probably 20 urinals lined up.
Hmm.
And I walk in, and I step up to the urinal, and then someone else comes in. It's just me and one other person. I look over, and it's Jim Kelly,
He's
and
human. Yeah. Yeah.
he was just on the air, crying
Yeah.
his eyes out, announcing his retirement. And I said, "What's going on?" He's like, "Nothing much."
Were you? Oh, did you? Last one. Now I'm going to give you like a classic for us. Just the name would be Henry Durando. You remember Henry?
Yes.
So we got a scoop that this was around the time Mike Tyson was. You remember he lived up in Trumbull County.
Right.
Saw your
Right.
video on Trumbull County. That was good, by the way. He I can't remember where, but it was with Don King. It was Trumbull County, and we had gotten scoop that he had to make an appearance for part of his his community service, and I think he had to appear in front of the judge for something or whatever. We got a scoop that he was going to be there, so Henry and I get in that wonderful vehicle, the Lordstown Made Cavalier, and we're going. Felt like we are going 150 miles an hour, but the car could only go 40, and it's shaking everywhere, So we get there. He gets the 7,000 pounds of gear on him. He's sweating and all this. We're going all over the place, and there it is. We got the scoop. We were right. We were the only ones there, except for us and it's an AP photographer. So this is pre-internet or the beginning of the internet. But so there was an Associated Press photographer there. I didn't know that at the time. But I thought this is great. We're the only ones with this video, which ended up on the network. So we were ABC. And so Henry gets the gear on, and then Mike Tyson, my favorite boxer of all time, gets out of the car with his posse of a bunch of people to lead the way. And Henry is backing, it's tough. You're walking backwards and trusting me that I'm going to make sure he doesn't plow into something. So it's camera. I'm pointing the camera at you, and you're walking towards me, and he's backing up. And I got you, Henry. I got you, Henry. I got you, Henry. I got you, Henry. And he's videotaping, and I didn't realize there was a curb, so I let Henry down, and Henry tripped over the curb and fell backwards. And it was Mike Tyson who helped him up. And Mike's like, it's not worth it. It's not worth. Don't get injured. I'll help you. I'll give you your video. Just read it. He was super nice. So and so the AP photographer was on the other side and took a picture, and it's a picture of Mike Tyson going to help Henry and me trying to catch Henry as he's falling. And that photograph was the photograph that was, however they did it back then, and it would end up in newspapers, whoever decided to use that photograph.
Yeah.
So it was a national photograph of Henry falling and Mike Tyson, hey, it's okay, going to catch him. Great, Henry Durando.
So before I started at WYTV in Youngstown and I was working for Image Video, Court TV had just started, and they were asked to do the pool for the Jeffrey Dahmer trial in Milwaukee.
Yeah.
And they Court TV they were hiring people that had like little rack. They would bring in a rack of equipment, and they needed a production truck. So somehow they found us, and we ended up going to Milwaukee, and I spent like 30 days in Milwaukee doing the Jeffrey Dahmer trial.
I didn't know that.
Well, when we were doing the trial, it was like 8 hours a day and just Dahmer facing forward, and we could never get a shot of him reacting, doing anything. And it was, by the 15th day, it was just like kind of like, okay, we can't really get a shot of the guy. So my job was to record and then edit a package for the newscast that night on Court TV. But then I also had to go in and turn all the cameras on. So for some reason, this one morning, I had all these rubber bands around my wrist, and I go up to turn the cameras on, and the one guy on camera was supplied from CNN. His name was Dave, and he says, "Hey, let me have one of those rubber bands." So he took the rubber band, and he set it down on the desk where Dahmer sat, right in front of his chair. And I didn't think anything of it. And then couple hours later, the trial's going on, and all of a sudden the director, who had just been like bored out of his mind, perks up in the back of the truck. He's like, stand by two, and he takes two, and it's a shot of Dahmer's hands, and he has the rubber band, and he's twirling the rubber band like this, and he zooms out to Dahmer, and he's like, the director's screaming, "That's the most action I've had out of the guy in 2 weeks." Well, that shot ended up on ABC,
Right.
CNN, CBS, NBC.
Yeah.
So that was kind of a fun behind the scenes story. And then now, speaking of Henry and backing up,
Yeah.
when Youngstown State won the national championship one year,
Football.
President Clinton invited them to the White House.
Yeah.
And Bob Hannon and I go to DC, and we get there, and it took us an hour to get through security with all my gear. And as I'm standing there, all of a sudden this Oldsmobile pulls up at the gates of the White House and honks the horn. And security, they look out and they wave them in, and they open the gates. I'm like, who gets that kind of treatment?
Yeah.
Who pulls up is John Glenn.
Oh, wow.
John Glenn gets out. So we go into the East Room, and they do the big ceremony with the president and the whole team. All the players are excited. We go out on the front lawn of the White House, and we're interviewing players. And I was young, and I'd never been in a situation like that where I'm like, I got to get all these shots and interviews quickly because it's happening really quickly. So I'm moving fast. The camera's 25 pounds, and the battery on the back of it's about 8 pounds. And so I'm backing up because I want to get a shot. I'm backing up. No one's helping me like you were helping Henry. I back up, and all of a sudden I feel bam. And I'm like, oh my God, I just ran into somebody. Like, I hit him hard.
Yeah.
And I turn around, and it was John Glenn.
Oh, no.
I nailed him right in the head.
With the camera pack.
With the camera.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And he's like, it's okay. I'm all right. So I apologized to him, and I talked to him for a few seconds, and then he walks to his car. Now, this is when keyless fob remotes had just come out, right? And he goes to unlock his car, and he hits the alarm. And so now his car is meh, 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 on the front of the White House lawn. And he's like trying to hit it, and he cannot get it to turn off. So I walk over to him, and I grab his keys. I say, "Here, let me help you." And I beep, beep, and I hit it, and it shuts down. And he turns to me, and he looks at me, and he says, I could fly a spaceship, but I can't turn off this stupid alarm.
That's great.
Oh, man.
That's great. Yeah. We what was were you with me? Okay, last one. Were you, because you mentioned Bob Hannon. Bob is he the president of the United Way in Youngstown, I think. But did you go with me to Atlanta to cover the World Series with the Indians and the Braves that year when we arrived, and Bob forgot to call in the press credentials?
No, it was not there for that one.
Okay, it doesn't matter. We snuck into the world. We literally snuck in because we didn't have credentials. It might have been Keith Bell.
Yeah.
I thought it was you.
No.
Where we decided we're going to put our head down and just pretend, because they'll never notice that we didn't have a press pass, and it wasn't you.
I had a buddy in Orlando. He covered the national. He wasn't really supposed to be. He had a before and after game credential for live shots, and it was the Super Bowl. It was either Super Bowl or national championship football game, but he wanted to watch the game, and he's not a big football fan, but he was like, "This is going to be a good one. I want to watch." So they get done with their live shots, but it's like right up to the game, and security is like kicking everybody out that doesn't have the right credentials. So he's got to coil up all these cables, and he puts them in a bag. Well, he realizes now that the security, they've moved on. And so he's like, well, I'm just going to keep coiling the same cable. So he sat there with this AC cable in his hand for 2.5 hours, watched the whole game. Yeah. Watch the whole game. Yeah. And whenever security would want to walk by, he would
wrap it. Just pretend you're doing something important.
Look busy. Look busy.
Get away with it. We covered the 96 Olympics. Wasn't that you with me in Atlanta?
No.
That wasn't you?
No.
I don't know who. Maybe that was with Keith. Well, you and I went to Atlanta then, was it to cover the winter meetings for the NFL when the Browns left
Yeah, that
Cleveland and
was
went to
us.
Baltimore?
That
And then
was
you
us.
lost your, well, we went to Baltimore too, but you,
Went to Baltimore, and yeah, the airline lost our gear.
yeah, which we probably should not have shipped it that way.
Yeah, maybe should have carried it
Live
on
and
the
learn.
plane.
So, all right. So you do all that was fun. Thanks for taking me back. It was good memories. So you're a videographer doing news, and then you just and what I read and from what I remember from you, you started your company, which is Blue Skies HD Video and Film Production. You started it out of frustration because you decided to do weddings. You got engaged and you'd had a bad experience.
Right.
Tell me. So this is great. This is what's inspiring. Talking with Chris Hedrick, also known as Rig Guy, from Blue Skies HD Video and Film Production. You do weddings, you also do corporate, and you've also pivoted recently into something else we'll get to because of COVID. But you've changed your direction of your career, and you started a business based on what you found a need. Just tell us about this need.
So yeah, my wife and I, we got married, and we wanted a videographer that was good. And at the time, this is 2002, the videographers who were putting together wedding videos, it was still cheesy heart wipes, and
Mm,
horrible dissolves and bad music and just real cheesy wedding videos. And I wanted something that was more upbeat, more lively. And so when we actually got married, I had other friends that were videographers. They were at our wedding, and they helped shoot it. We put together this cool little video, and we showed it to some people, and they were like, "Man, you got it. I would love to have had a video like that." And then I was also aided in the fact that I injured my back really bad on the job, and I was out of work for 6 weeks. And I couldn't even put my own shoes on. And I thought to myself, I cannot, be a videographer in the news for the next 20, 30 years. It's just going to beat up my body. And I knew that the cameras were getting smaller. And so my wife at the time, she was getting her MBA, and she actually wrote our business plan as a project in her during her coursework. And I remember one of her professors telling her, "This sounds like a really great idea to start a business." And she said, "Well, we're actually doing it." So we started our business. I would say at first we were 100% weddings, and we were cutting edge at the time. We were doing stuff that people had not seen, like full videos where there wasn't one dissolve in the video, just fast paced, cuts only, fun, upbeat. Because you don't want like some somber, like piano solo during a wedding video. It's a happy moment. People want to relive the sort of elevated, heightened emotion that they have that day, not, oh, look at us. They don't want that. They respond better to that heightened sort of sense of emotion, right? Because really it's probably your second biggest day in your life where you're going to have heightened emotions. The first probably being when you have a kid, I would say completely outweighs your wedding day as far as heightened emotions, things like that. So we started doing videos and immediately took off because our style was completely different. Fast forward to today, our style is probably, there are a lot of companies out there that do that we do. Um, at this point, though, we have over 1,000 weddings under our belt, and so we have seen everything. Um, any situation that comes up during a wedding, we've seen it happen. We can either fix it before the bride and groom either know that it happens, and that's not necessarily just things that may go wrong with us, but may go wrong with other things that are happening that day. And when wedding vendors, they'll know this when I say this, but we all tend to work together the day of and make a lot of things happen that the bride and groom and the family don't know about, because we want it to go seamless for them. And you don't really need to be going up and asking, for permission to do things. Or why would you ask somebody, can I make this right? This is going wrong. Can I make it right? You would never do that. You would just do that. And in business, you would do that as well. So Um, we started doing those, and then quickly got into doing medical videos. And uh, Nationwide Children's Hospital, which is one of the best children's hospitals in the country, if not the world, they got a new CEO, and they really started taking, YouTube had been around for a while, but their YouTube page was, it was okay. Um, and they had some shifts in marketing, and we had some connections there. And we started doing exclusive videos for Nationwide Children's Hospital, and our style and the storytelling that we brought to the table, it was almost as if we were an extension of their marketing team. And we did so many videos for them that their viewership on their YouTube page went from about, 200 to 300 views on any particular video to now, when they do a video, it's anywhere from 5 to 10,000 views. Um, and in fact, we did so many videos for them and helped them build up their YouTube page that we ended up eventually, and this is not a bad thing, we worked ourselves out of a job basically, because that now you build up the company's video portfolio, and the need is there, that they thought, well, we should now just go and hire somebody. So they ended up actually hiring another producer and two videographers to do what we were doing for them. But that experience then led us into doing videos for other hospitals in the region. We've done stuff all over the country for medical. We really know how to work with patients. And that's that news background that kind of comes in. And you'll know this when you go and you're doing a sensitive story, you need to be able to produce the video, but then also have compassion for the people that are involved. And you're never going to start interviewing a mother about their child that has cancer, and when you start the interview, yell out, "Rolling!" You're never going to do that, because that's just, you need to take that wall and that sort of element out of it altogether, and you just tap the producer on the shoulder and say, and give them a thumbs up. All right, we're good to go. Let's go.
Well, that's an art form of storytelling too. You know how to tell a
Absolutely.
story, and your background of those years in news will help you know how to, because you had to craft, you would work with the reporter and craft a minute and 30-second package, so about story, the right way to tell a story. So you're probably going through this as you're interviewing people, showing the compassion, as you say, but you're also, in your mind, when you have gold. You
Right.
already know a
Right.
17-second soundbite. And I always say this, whether it's testimonials, the kinds of things when you're telling stories, authentic stories that are not scripted, which is what you do, and which is what it connects people to people, it's almost more important a lot of times how they say it rather than what they say. In other
Right.
words, when they have that, it might be a 12-second soundbite that has two words, but you can read the emotion on their face and hear it in the crackling of their voice or whatever it is. It doesn't have to be sad either. It can be happy,
Right.
but emotion is what connects people, and it's authenticity, not the scripted stuff. And so I think that's where your strength is you know how to tell a story, and you do it utilizing your video abilities as well as your audio abilities. Audio is really important when it comes to video, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh yeah. The big thing about preparation is probably the biggest thing when you're doing an interview and it's going to be emotional. Um, and then I mean, I guess you kind of like have to let it happen sometimes.
Yeah.
But I would say definitely there are people that are going to get emotional right away, or they're going to wait till the very end. And I mean, this is a selfish reason for me, but as a videographer and an editor, you almost don't want the person to get emotional in the middle of the interview, because they really look different physically. And
After.
so now you're trying to edit that together in a
Mm.
way. Some sound bites come after the emotion happens that
Yeah.
are more open and free, and they feel better because it's like a weight has been lifted when they do let it all out.
Hmm.
But then physically they look completely different. So you can almost tell in an interview, in a story, when that you see that shot of that person and they look different in the
Yeah.
different shots. It's kind of an art form, knowing how to try to control that a little bit. You can't always control it,
Yeah.
uh, obviously, because people will just do what they want to do.
Yeah. If they're going to go somewhere, if they're gonna, you're not gonna cut them off from, they're going, you're on something. You're not gonna say, listen, can we save that for later? I
Yeah,
don't
no, you're not
wanna.
going to do it.
It's because,
No.
yeah, you're gonna. But that's an art form of storytelling, knowing when you should cut or when you should let someone go.
Yeah.
Let them go. So
There have been times when we've done stories that you almost feel like wow, they don't get it. They're like, you're interviewing somebody and you're like, do they realize what's happening? I did a story about a kid who was a middle school um, football player, and he got
mm,
a really bad stinger. And I mean, he couldn't feel his legs for like 10 minutes.
mm,
And he was from Upper Arlington, which is,
mhm,
football powerhouse in
yeah,
Ohio.
it's Ohio.
And he just, all he could think about was football, 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 football. And his parents were even the same way. They're like, my kid's going to go and play at Upper Arlington, and he might go on to Ohio State, and he might be a pro. And he's a seventh grader.
Mm,
And here he's got that's a spine injury.
yeah,
It's not just oh, you were out for a few minutes.
yeah,
So we did a story on them. And while we were interviewing them, they're just in denial
mm,
that this is a real thing. But then we had the doctor's interview, and we had an expert on spinal injuries. And he was just basically saying that if you've had a stinger like this at such a young age, you really should probably never be playing football again.
oh,
And he had examples, and these strong kids who like were just, they went back and played again and had a reoccurring injury, and it was devastating to them. And so we aired that story, and 2 days later the mom called us back and she said, thank you so much for
wow,
doing that story. Our kid is never playing football again.
wow,
And it was just amazing, the storytelling, the power of it got through to that family, where if maybe we hadn't have done that story, they might have continued down that path. I don't know.
wow. That's pretty cool. I don't have a story to match that. Don't
And
have a
that's just,
topper.
yeah, that's just one. That's
Yeah,
just
that's
one.
pretty powerful. But that also goes to, I mean, there's journalism in there too. So
Yeah.
you have, it's almost like a lawyer. I learned from my dad. You ask the question, and then you don't get the answer that you're looking for. They're holding back. So ask it again, just in a different way. Then
Yeah.
you ask it again in a different way, and then again in a different way, without them knowing that you're really asking the same question,
Right.
trying to get what the information that you need or the emotion or whatever. But you were able to tell that story, which connected with her. That's pretty cool. That's really
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
So your company, the weddings, the corporate thing through the hospitals, but then COVID hits, and I find this really interesting. In the story you told me, I'll let you tell it. But I mean, COVID, business wise, has affected all small businesses across the country, and obviously there haven't been as many weddings during COVID. Corporations aren't exactly having people, there's not a ton of things going on. So you guys were, business wise, you're in trouble, right? Tell me about the conversation that you had with your wife, Julie, who runs the company with you. Tell me how that went down and the pivot.
So March hit, and we had our year pretty much booked out. And like I said, about 30%, 40% of our business are weddings.
Right,
But then we also have event videography, where we do big events for corporations,
right.
along with the actual production of stories. It just disappeared.
Hmm.
Uh, Luckily, the wedding side, people didn't cancel; they postponed. So
So yeah,
our
right.
spring, summer weddings moved to the fall, and then even to 2021. But then our corporate clients, the events that they had scheduled, those went away, and so we just saw it disappearing, and we were just, what are we going to do, And so we were looking all of the different options, and being self-employed, we didn't get it. There was no stimulus check coming our way. There was no unemployment coming our way. It was really left up to us. What are we going to do? And I'm blessed in that my business partner is also my wife. So um, she has the same stake in it that I do. And where I say I'm blessed is that she literally can sell a free magazine. She's amazing. And so when she puts her mind to it, the creativity that she has really, I think, saved us for the most part. We had, and I thought every family had ups and downs. We had a day where uh, we were having a down day, sitting around, and I looked at her and I said, you know, we got to do something. Nobody's going to come and save us and rescue us. You know, no, there's no help on the way. We have to do this on our own. And so we went to lunch, and I asked her. I said, who really is like hurting right now? Like they've been charged with we have to do something, and we don't know how to do it, and how can we help? And she looked at me right away and she said, and I'll give her this credit: high school principals. High school principals need video right now, because we started talking about graduations. And I think we even had a conversation about this a couple of days earlier, that all the graduations were getting canceled or they're trying to move them back. And I remember just talking to her, like, you know, most people get a high school degree and they graduate from high school, but not everybody gets a college degree. And then even some people who get college degrees, they don't even care if they just mail it to them. The graduation itself is not, it's sort of a rite of passage. You know, families really look forward to that. And this is just being ripped away. And so we developed a plan to where kids could actually cross the stage, families could see them receive their diploma. We'll videotape it, we put it together. So we put this plan together, sent a mass email out. We never send emails out, mass emails. So we sent a mass email out to all the high school principals. And the next day, they just started calling. And so we ended up what was turning out to be probably our worst May in 18 years that we'd ever had. Turned out to be actually one of our best, because we ended up doing like 10 graduations, helped schools figure out how they can do this safely. Um, and so uh, I give all that credit to Julie, my wife, because she came up with the idea. She saw it through, and we ended up. I mean, it really did save us, because it got us through the summertime until our business started picking up again.
So it somebody else out there, whatever their business is, they're struggling, trying to figure it out. I mean, why don't you speak to somebody uh, that might be in your situation now, the situation you had? Maybe it's hitting them, or maybe they haven't busted out. What is it that you can? What advice can you give to a sole proprietor, a business owner, small business owner right now? I mean, to me, I look at you, it's inspiring. You figured it
Yeah,
out, right? But I love
yeah,
what because we feel sorry for ourselves quite a bit. You
right.
know, how can you what advice can you give to somebody to bust out of that?
You know, it's really about fear. You know, everybody in a situation like this, and even now, I mean, it's still uncertain how things are going to go, and trying new things. And this is even just starting a business on your own. Period. With it, even without COVID, is, let's say, uh, let me back up. So like Julie's dad was he's a very regimented person. He always worked a 40-hour a week job, made sure he had good benefits. And now he's reaping those benefits in retirement. But he always just was that go to work 9 to 5 or 6 to 2, come home, 40 hours a week kind of a guy, right? And that was kind of her mentality at first. But then when she went through her MBA and being married to me, and I kind of have a little bit of an entrepreneurial spirit, we branched out, we started our business. And anytime you start your own business, it's a leap of faith, right? And with COVID, let's say you have your own business and it's been successful, and now this is getting in the way. You, I mean, you said it earlier, uh, the word pivot is cliche, but that's what you have to do. You have to think a different direction, you know. And And the only thing in your way of doing that is being afraid of the unknown, right? So
Yeah, unknown is
my yeah,
that is. I always
my,
think if you can figure, if you know there's going to be surprises, then there won't be any surprises.
right. So my dad told me early on, I was a young kid, I was playing baseball, first time playing baseball. I was absolutely terrified of striking out. So what would I do? I was just didn't know what to do. I was just sort of handicapped by the fear of striking out, that I wouldn't swing the bat. So what happens when you don't swing the bat? They just throw it right down the middle and you strike out looking. Anyways, you're striking out anyways. But there's no chance. He used to tell me there's no chance of you getting a hit unless you swing the bat. So you got to swing the bat. So next time I went up to the plate, I swung the bat and I made contact, and it ends up between the shortstop and the second baseman, and I'm on first base. And as a little kid, I'm like, what's, I mean, now that I look back on it, like just such simple advice, but to a little kid, that was huge, right? So next time I'm up, I'm swinging away. Now I'm striking out swinging, but at least I'm trying to get the hit. If you don't swing at all, you don't even have a chance to get a hit. You don't even have a chance to ground out to third, you know? So you've got to swing the bat. And when it comes to business, and whether it's just starting your business or trying to come up with that idea that's going to help you survive this, you have to go for it, and that's the only way I can describe it. Is you just gotta, it's going to be scary, but you got to just deal with it, right? And you have to live with that fear and overcome it and try something, right? Because hey, it's better to go down fighting than to go down not doing anything at all.
Yeah, it's almost risk reward too. I mean, there is no reward
Right.
if you don't take some type of risk, and the only thing that can happen is bad if you're in a bad situation. So you're
Right.
going to have to do something to turn it around. And like we said, it's cliche, but it's a word we're using in business now, and pivot.
Yeah.
You have to figure it out. So what you're saying is figure it out. You know, when you see, to me, when someone started their business in the first place, they had a plan, right? They had the courage. So you had the courage to do it in the first place. What you're saying now is just regain that courage. Yeah,
Right.
it's an unknown, but come up with a strategy and a plan and take a swing and go for it. I think it also comes down to confidence, right?
I mean, look at the platform that we're talking to on today, Zoom. Who heard of Zoom a year ago? Not that many people. It was there, but I mean, it's not like it's normal in
Yeah,
our lives,
I used a lot of go to. Yeah,
right? And you get a lot of things done with it. I mean, we had the ability to rent stuff out and do things live and live streaming things a year ago, uh, but it wasn't in house. And so with requests coming in for streaming, I mean, on faith, I went out and I purchased gear, and having technical directing and directing experience, I'm like, yeah, I can do that. And so bought the equipment, and I just basically on faith that I know we can make that work. Uh, got set up, and now we're doing streaming productions for people that need it. I mean, look at the people that are struggling, theaters, not movie theaters, but people that put on
right.
musicals and plays, right? They can't do them. So we've done several drive-in theater type productions where the small casts are doing productions on stage, and we've got robotic cameras, and we can have one person in the booth so that we don't have multiple crew members in the room, and we can do a live production and send it to a drive-in theater, to where these theaters can still have performances and keep going. It's
That's
amazing how creative you can get
right.
to keep things going as normal as possible.
So if somebody right now is like, yeah, that's a cool idea. I have an event, maybe it's a play or whatever, and I want people to be able to experience it. Can't do it in person. So what do they do? I mean, your website is blueskieshd.com, but the focus, because this is your pivot, has been recent and it's been very successful. So you're super busy doing that. There's not a lot of information on this pivot.
Right.
I'm gonna see information on weddings, which, by the way, you're gonna be back in business here soon with that,
Right.
over the next, this summer, right? Yeah, I assume
Oh yeah.
corporate videos, but I don't learn much about it on the the streaming section of it. So I'm assuming you want us to encourage people, just go to the website, give us a phone call. Phone number's there, right?
Yeah, phone number's there. It's 614-890-4045. And when you call that number, uh, our owner and CEO, Julie, will answer the phone.
All right.
And phone conversation, it's amazing. It's old school technology,
Right. Right.
but there's so much information that can be given over the phone because, and I found this with a lot of clients, sometimes they go in with an idea that is either too small
Right.
or it's too big of an idea. And we can help them get it to where it needs to be for what they actually want. And in a lot of cases, they don't really know what they want, and so, Julie's an expert at crafting that piece uh, to fit within the budget, and then to also deliver the video product that you actually want and
All
that
right.
you need.
It's blueskieshd.com. Blueskieshd.com. Visit
That's right.
there, learn more. By the way, Ray Guy, this is the longest sidewalk talk in sidewalk talk history. So congratulations. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey,
No,
I
this
got a
was,
question for you. If you wanted
yeah.
to do business with somebody in the South, how do you explain shovel the sidewalk to people in the South where there is no snow?
Right. See, it's not actually about shoveling the snow. You see, what happened, the company was, the idea for the company came when I was working with a client. I was actually in radio at the time, and it was a C-store, a convenience store, and they did a reopening. It was awesome. They like had free pizza. Everyone was dressed. It was great, and everything was perfect except it had been to snow that day. I think it was in March, and it happened to snow that day, and they weren't prepared. And people were like walking in, like, "Oh man, their feet were all wet." They're walking through the snow, and I said that it's common sense marketing, that everything you do affects your brand. So it could be, name of the company could be "Don't be an a-hole when you answer the phone," but I didn't think that would go over well. So it's like, or "Don't rob a bank wearing the company T-shirt," you know. So it's really about making sure, just understanding that anything you do, good or bad, if you have a great front person answering the phones, in this situation, it's Julie, she's going to do a great job. You can't have a bad day. And I realized it when we were in news. It's like you could have a bad day. I remember a friend of mine died. I found out at 3:30. I had a 6 o'clock newscast. This was Oh, it was in Youngstown. So a friend of mine from Steubenville had died. I don't know if you knew Tiki. He was a director, but he had passed away. And I found out at 3:30. That's a bad day.
Yeah.
And there's no substitute. So, and when you're on at 6 o'clock, it happens to be live. And so that was a rough day. You can't just go on and like if you're a disc jockey in the morning and your job is to laugh, you got to laugh.
Yeah.
Otherwise it's going to affect your brand. So everything you do affects your brand, positive or negative. So if you don't shovel the sidewalk to your business on a snowy day, that's actually a marketing problem, because people will have a bad experience with your brand. So that's a long answer to a short question. So it has
And,
nothing to do with snow there, Ray Guy.
and keeping in control of that brand, don't ever pass out free company T-shirts. Never.
Right? That could be
Never.
dangerous of
That could be dangerous.
who's wearing your brand. That's a
That's
great
right.
point. And we have these 6 steps that we take all of our clients through. And one of them, step number 5, is protecting the brand. And that would be, make sure you're protecting the brand. It's not just about growing, it's protecting. And I just had a conversation yesterday with someone. Oh, I know it was about. It's a little bit political, and I don't want to get too political, but it was about, just do what I say, not what I do, kind of thing, which has been happening with COVID. A lot of politicians visiting
Oh yeah.
restaurants when they shouldn't be. But you talk about ruining your own personal brand. That's not good for the brand,
No.
So Does that make sense now, Chris? I know that
It
you're
does. It
into this.
does.
So, in fact, we do have a client in the South, in
So
South Carolina.
I can shovel the sidewalk in Florida if I'm down in Florida.
You could shovel the sidewalk anywhere you want to be. And I know you are in Florida right now. I can see it's sunny and warm, but you got your little Florida Christmas tree. So that's wonderful. That is very nice. Very nice. All right, Ray Guy. Thanks again. I appreciate it. Again, that's Chris Hedrick. He and Julie run Blue Skies HD video and film production. BlueSkiesHD.com. Appreciate you sharing your story. I had a great time with memories, sports memories, even though that ate up most of the time, and we were supposed to be talking business, but it was good talking to you and seeing you again, Chris.
Thanks, Steve.
All right, Ray Guy. So listen, you can consume any of our podcasts, our Sidewalk Talk podcasts, on any channel that you want, however you get your podcast. You could also visit our website, shovelthesidewalk.com, and there is all of our podcasts. I think we're up to like 80 now. Or if you have a story of inspiration, information, education, or you know of a story or somebody that you think we should be talking to, go ahead. There's a form there, fill it out, and then we'll go ahead and contact you or that person, and we'll get them into an episode soon. So thanks again to Ray Guy, also known as Chris Hedrick, out there at Blue Skies Video and Film Production. Thank you out there for watching, listening, and participating. I'm Steve Fortunato, and this has been Sidewalk Talk.